Hey everyone, Cursed Deck Builder here, making our way to 10,000 decks. And right now we're looking at an Oloro Ageless Ascetic deck. This deck comes to us from No Scope Champ 96024, who says they've got a few decks, and we're going to look at this one here, Oloro, that says a control-ish deck that tries to win with Sanguine Bond and Exquisite Blood, or just Thassa's Oracle. As always, this deck list is in the video description below, so if you want to look alongside me and make your own decisions and see if we agree or disagree. Though I will say Aetherhelm is particularly frustrating to use. I find that maybe I just don't know what to do, but if I go by CMC, it doesn't divide by type. And then if I go in compact, it believes that instant sorcery and enchantments and artifacts should all be considered one type. Not quite sure what to do with that, so we're just going to look at the visual guide and see what we can make of it. So let's look at Oloro and let's see what kind of decisions we can make on this deck. So the first thing, Oloro is a commander zone card. It has Eminence before Eminence was a keyword, and it says each turn you gain 2 life on your upkeep. And this works either if Oloro's on the battlefield or in the command zone. And then while he's on the battlefield, it says whenever you gain life, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card, and each opponent loses 1 life. Now, when we look below and we look at the deck list, we can see there are cards that play within this strategy. Let's see. I wonder if this Necro Impotence is meant to be Necropotence, but I think it's very funny that it's Necro Impotence. But if we look down at our creatures, which are Veto down here, Marauding Blight Priest and Veto, we can see there's a bit of a theme of using our life gain to deal damage to our opponents, much like Oloro is here, does themselves. But you might also notice we have a few other strategies, namely cards like Expropriate, Tidespout Tyrant, Hullbreaker Horror, cards like Force of Will, cards like Esper Sentinel, Vampiric Tutor, Dranith Magistrate. So it feels like we have a mix between a very strong control stacks list that is getting close to what I would consider almost CEDH, not quite CEDH strength, and we have a bit of a vibe of life gain and life lost through that life gain. So, looking at this, my questions are, how are these two halves of your deck working together? Because if I'm playing a deck like this, and the people I'm playing with, if Marauding Blight Priest is a good card, like if by playing this and draining your opponents for 1 life every upkeep is good, then a card like Thoughtseize is bad. Does that make sense? Thoughtseize is a very competitive style card in Commander because you're kind of breaking the rule where you want your cards to affect all your opponents or give a large amount of board presence or be removal. Thoughtseize is 1 card from 1 opponent. It is a 1-for-1 effect that you use primarily to check for counter magic or to stop someone from comboing off. It is particularly bad if you just run it out, see that your opponent's playing green, and I don't know, take an Arbor Elf from them. So these two halves of the deck, the hyper strong Mystic Remora, Demonic Consultation, Thassa's Oracle combo, and the Marauding Blight Priest Veto style. Now, Veto, to be fair, works with Exquisite Blood, so I don't mind Veto as much. The Felidar Sovereign side, let's say. How are these two halves gelling? How are you finding these two strategies are working out for you? Because I'm going to suggest that if your play group has a high level of power to the point that you feel you need to be bringing in Mental Misstep, I don't think these life gain cards are going to be as essential. So what do we do here then, right? I think so. First of all, this is kind of a grim thought, but you are rapidly approaching the power level of deck where the power level of your 99 is going to outshine your commander. If you are in black and blue and you are playing Demonic Consultation and Thassa's Oracle and means to tutor these cards through Demonic Tutor, Vampiric Tutor, and the like, oftentimes this is going to be stronger than what your commander itself does. In a deck like that, Oloro is flavor. Because I'm also going to suggest that at that level of CEDH, gaining 2 life a turn isn't that meaningful outside of ad nauseum effects. Now, I could be wrong. My knowledge in CDH is kind of insular, and maybe 2 life a turn does matter, especially when it comes to evening out cards for ad nauseum, necropotence, gaining your life back on mental missteps. But my knowledge on CDH also tells me that the majority of winning combos are instant win combos, such as combos where you create an infinite number of attackers and attack all your opponents, such as um, creating a creature with infinite power and attacking unblocked, or likewise Thassa's Oracle's Demonic Consultation wins, where you just win the game. Use a card that just says win the game. I don't think oftentimes you're being beaten slowly enough that the 2 life a turn matters. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand the power of playing Dark Confidant, Timna, these kind of really strong creatures, and they will attack you here and there. And I think Oloro is a very good um, de-incentivizer for that kind of thing. Because why, outside of getting the Timna triggers, why would they be attacking you with a two power creature? You're just going to gain the life back. So as we're reaching that power level, I am questioning Oloro's competency in his position. He's just sitting down there, right? He's not going to do much. In the same way, I think these kind of cards like Marauding Blight Priest, cards like Felidar Sovereign, Helioid God of the Sun, Sheoldred's Apocalypse, the Apocalypse, I wouldn't be too against that. Well of Lost Dreams, I'm medium on this card, but I will let you dictate its strength. But these types of cards, Authority of the Consul, even Stormscape Familiar, considering how many pips you have all over, but these cards, how much value are you getting out of them? They feel abnormally weak in a deck with such power. In a deck you want to play Tidespout Tyrant and then protect it for a few turns, because as you do, you're going to punish your opponents out of the game. A deck that wants to play Expropriate and pull out a bunch of cards. The Book of Exalted Deeds also feels particularly strange here. I'm sure you have the card to make yourself. You might not. There's the Mutavault, but is that actually going to keep you alive? Like, really, at this power level? Are your opponents not like, is Vindicate not an option? Are Boomerang style bounce land effects not options? Because I feel like they are. Um, I see that this can be strong if your opponents do not pack those cards, but they eventually will. So I have to ask, is that always going to be the case? Sun Droplet as well, really kind of confusing me on the direction of this deck. So what I'm going to suggest is that you have a really strong, almost CEDH. I think you'd be missing 1 or 2 more mana rocks. That level of deck here. And then you have a few cards that work in a shape of Oloro, and I don't know if that's exactly where you want to be. So I would think that through. I would think that direction of what you want to do in the deck. And what your direction ends up being is going to shape the deck by a large margin because the more you want to play Oloro as your commander, the weaker this deck is going to be. And I don't want you to misunderstand when I say weaker. It doesn't mean bad. It just means that the power level will go down. There are a lot of decks that are satisfying to play that are lower power level than CEDH, and that should not be seen as a negative thing. If your group is playing at the power level that you can play, that playing Oloro is fine, but playing Demonic Consultation Thassa's is too strong, then you probably don't want to play this deck because your friends are going to dislike playing against a deck that overpowers them. But if you're playing at a power level where they're expecting you to show up with Demonic Consultation Thassa's, you know, and you the means to tutor into it in a number of ways, like are these cards is Marauding Blight Priest really doing anything for you? And even more so, I have to ask, even the Exquisite Blood Sanguine Bond combo, is that doing enough for you? Because think of the hypothetical hand you might have where you have interaction. Let's say you have a few free counter spells, or even just like Mana Drain, Dovin's Veto. You have a few tutors. What are you tutoring for? And how often is it going to be tutoring into the Sanguine Bond Exquisite Blood combo that requires 10 mana to go off? And how often are you tutoring into Demonic Consultation Thassa's with subsequent card draw to protect that combo, right? Like what direction are you going to? And don't get me wrong, sometimes you're going to tutor into removal or interaction to stop your opponents, but I feel like there is a balancing act that is happening with this deck. And that balancing act, the stronger version of the deck is beating the weaker version. It is much more prevalent, right? You're playing Limdul's Vault. Limdul's Vault isn't the kind of card you want to play so that you can finally pick up Marauding Blight Priest into your hand, right? You're playing it so you can pick up your combo pieces, so you can pick up your tutors and interaction. You're going to spend a long time looking at the several top 5 hands until you find one that you want to draw into. So, I think that is the core of this situation. This deck tech can't go much further until that idea is solidified because because it's going to shape the deck. Because if you were going to say, all right, I want to go back into more Allura stuff, then we have to talk about the power level and where we're going to cut. Because if the first cuts I would do would be the fast mana and the tutors, taking out Demonic Tutor, taking out, don't see Vampiric Tutor, there it is, Vampiric Tutor, taking those cards out primarily first. Then, after that, if you want to reduce power, I would take out some of the free interaction. I would take out some of the stronger cards. But if you want to increase power, and what cards do you want? I have a limited scope that I can tell you. I would say cards like Dark Confidant, Timna, um, probably Snapcaster Mage would maybe be fine here considering the cards you're playing. I would consider I want to say Thalia because I really like Thalia, but that's not the kind of stacks you want to play. It hurts you a lot more than it hurts your opponents. And I think Phyrexian Arena would have to turn into something else because I think that is also one of the cards I would count in the Marauding Blight Priest shell, where they're just a lower power level than the rest of your deck. I really like Phyrexian Arena, but you're playing much stronger cards. Rhystic Study will beat out Phyrexian Arena every time, and therefore it is overshadowing the life gain part of your deck. I hope this is helpful. I recognize this might not be exactly the direction you might be thinking or you want to go in because you are playing Oloro, so I have to assume you want to be playing Oloro. But I think it is important for us to sometimes be able to look at our decks in a critical lens and be able to see if the deck has turned into something that it wasn't intended to be. I've seen this a lot. I've had decks that have done this a lot, where I came in with one deck idea and I played it and I played it and I realized I have the wrong commander, or I realized it's just not working as the deck I wanted to play. And sometimes that answer becomes making the deck stronger. Maybe it gets to the point that you find that, Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond aren't working as win conditions, and so you pivoted to also grab Felidar Sovereign. And after that, that wasn't enough, so you pivoted into grabbing Thassa's Oracle combo. And that's fine, but it's important to acknowledge that maybe this transformation of the deck has turned it into something else, and that now you have to go back and think if you still want to play Exquisite Blood and Sanguine Bond. I think you'd be a lot happier if these two cards were more interaction, more ways to get ahead on your opponents, and at the power level that the rest of your deck represents. As always, if you make another draft of this deck, or if you'd like me to take a look at any other deck, there is a form in the video description that you can fill out and it will send the deck to me. I hope this is helpful. I like Oloro. I like Eminence. I think Eminence is a very strong ability. And I think once you figure out the direction of the deck, you will find it a lot more satisfying. All right, good luck.